What's going on, guys? Nick G here. I'm going to do a quick video about something I just realized because I'm sort of out of the loop with big movies that come out, but I'm fascinated with storytelling and literature and comics and just stories in general, and kind of seeing if they have any occult or psychological or symbolic significance to us, and anything that they can really teach us. Archetypes, psychologists have talked about that, like the significance of stories and characters and how they symbolize certain things. And I think most people feel that whether they really actively recognize or are able to articulate what it is they're really taking in, but I feel like that's at least part of it, because these stories mean something to people. They dress up as the characters, they quote their favorite characters. That's a big one, quoting them, because characters are symbols and they represent a certain idea or a certain feeling or a certain mentality. And the best way I think that's expressed is through dialogue. And people love quoting their favorite characters. They get tattoos of their favorite characters. They go to Comic-Con, they dress up as their favorite characters. And ultimately, these stories are influenced from our own realities. Even Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel, he has this phrase he said, trying to remember exactly what he said. He said, the way we tell our stories of heroism will never change. Marvel is a reflection of the world right outside our window. So he's even pointing out that these stories mean something and they're drawing upon something much deeper. Anyways, now that I got all that spiel out of the way, something I realized was Thanos is from Saturn, or at least Saturn's moon, Titan, but it's still a direct connection to Saturn. It's most people say, oh, he was born on Saturn's moon. They don't even just call it Titan. And the reason Saturn's moon is called Titan is because Saturn, again, is a symbol for many gods across many different cultures, because humans have a similar human experience as they go through life, and astronomy and astrology have great parallels to religious stories. And to the Greeks, Kronos was Saturn, and that's all. He's also the personification of time, and he was a Titan. So that's why Saturn's moon is named Titan. So even scientists are drawing upon these myths when it comes to naming the celestial bodies. So that's, whether they buy into the metaphysical or psychological meaning of the stories or not is another story. It's another debate, but they're at least naming them based off these ancient ideas. And it's certainly not an accident that Thanos is from Saturn's moon. Saturn is the classical astrological character for Satan when it comes to religious stories. He's also Saturn's also symbolized by the black sun, or the black star, or the dark star. And there's a certain psychology that's associated with Saturn. And again, I haven't seen most of these Marvel movies, so I can't really give you an in-depth, oh, here's what Thanos says and here's how it relates to the psychology of Saturn, or the psychology that Saturn represents. But there's a consistency in the psychology of most villains across most stories. And I get it's a little more complicated than he's evil, because he's trying to, from what I understand, he's trying to balance out the universe, because through technology and kindness, they're basically, the equilibrium is offset. Like, there's not enough resources to sustain the life that's ever increasing. It's basically like eugenics, population reduction. He's doing what, quote, must be done, So it's hard to, he's trying to do the right thing, and the ends justify the means and all that. And it's hard to think, because when we think of the Antichrist, right, when we think of Christ, the positive hero, the positive savior, the Antichrist, you still have to think of him as a savior. He's just doing it in a different way. If you wanted to elevate the villain's argument to its ultimate and not use a straw man and not just heap a pile of malevolence on him, even though that's definitely there and it's worth noting, you have to give him his due, like he's trying to actually save people. Like, basically think of it as like the plight of the tyrant. Why would you have to kill people? Why would you have to control them? Things like that. It's just, I'm just pointing out mainly, I don't want to I can't go over everything that I say from all my other videos and every video that I make. So if you want to hear more about Saturn worship in particular, go to my video Saturn worship, and I'm going to make, and that's just some of the information I have on it. I'm going to make more videos about that, because it's really an important, all-encompassing subject, in my opinion at least. Anyways, it's definitely not an accident that Thanos is associated with the planet Saturn. He's from Saturn's moon. He plays that archetype. He fills that role. There's definitely 100% on purpose occult significance to him being from there. Next, we have, from what I understand, the 5 members of his Black Order refer to one another as siblings and spouses and serve as Thanos's vanguards, generals, and agents during Infinity. So again, we see that reference with Chronos, Saturn, time, Infinity. And the reason I screenshot this is because his group, from what I understand, again, I haven't seen the Avenger movies, nothing against them, I'm sure they're great, but I just haven't seen them. His group is called the Black Order. That's not on accident either. That's totally on purpose. The color black is often associated with the Saturn mentality, evil, if you want to put it mildly, the tyrant. You think of like SS Nazis dressed in all black. You think of like Columbine, the black trench coat mafia. You think of it as dark, absent of light. You think of Black Order. You think of black in association with, because colors are symbolic too, and that doesn't mean every time someone's dressed in black or you see the color black it's an overt reference to like a tyrant's mentality. But in this case, him being from Saturn and then his group being called the Black Order, it's 100%. There's definitely a connection, and it's not on accident. Most of you can understand that one, like why is Darth Vader dressed in black, and you just think of all the Halloween themed stuff, like, oh, the darkness, the black, scary stuff. It's just, most people can understand that association. So there's that, the Black Order, kind of like the New World Order. Here's another, in Kabbalah, Saturn, a lot of these have astrological parallels. Kabbalah is like a Jewish mysticism, occultic tradition, and pretty much all occult traditions ultimately, kind of like how different movies have different characters with different names, but they all kind of end up meeting at the same place and symbolizing the same things. The same is true for like occult schools of thought, and Kabbalah is one of them. And the point is, Saturn, which is Binah, number 3, is color-coded as black. And if you see, I'm not trying to make this a communist thing, but if you look at the symbol that's underneath the 3, that's what we call the symbol of Saturn. And it looks exactly like the communist hammer and sickle, because that symbol is, the Soviets were referencing Saturn with that symbol on their flag. It wasn't to symbolize the farmer or the worker. It was a Saturn reference. And again, if you think about what the Soviet Union and communism did there, it wasn't, it's about, it was under the guise of caring about you, like doing the right thing. But it was about, consolidation of power, man thinking he's God, death, anti-human, things like that. Not a good time. A lot of people died, hundreds of millions, or just millions of people. I don't know how many. A lot of people died. So again, even in Kabbalah, he's called the Black Order, Thanos. And it's kind of weird too. I don't know too much about Kabbalah. Speaking of Thanos and color coding, it's kind of weird that Saturn black, and then the pathway from this to one, which is like God, the crown, right? In the chakra tradition, the crown chakra would be this guy right here, and that's like God. That's like outside our realm. Anyways, the pathway from Saturn to that is purple. Thanos is purple. I wonder if there's any relationship there. I'm not saying that for sure. I'm just now realizing that. So that's interesting. Anyways, it's definitely a connection between Saturn, Thanos being born there, the psychology that represents the character that he is, his motivations, his beliefs, his values, the things that he does, the things that he says, the color black. All these are connected. Here's Thanos rising. I wish I could read that. It's bad quality. Believe me when I tell you you've never seen Thanos drawn? I don't know. Anyways, Thanos rising. Here he is. He's got the skulls. And another way you can think about Saturn in time is as the Grim Reaper, because he always has a sickle or a scythe. And, Thanos is obviously bringing death. He's wiping out half the universe or whatever his goal is. I wish I could, for you Marvel fans, definitely feel free to chime in. And I can't, I don't know the difference between Thanos, because Thanos was a character before these movies came out. Obviously, the comics are older than the movies. So I wonder how much of a difference in his character there is from the comic books translated into the movies. I'm sure there's still like a definite consistency, but I'm sure it's different as well. If you guys know anything about that, let me know. But yeah, he's sitting behind Saturn, definitely these guys are associated. It's right there in your face as far as I'm concerned. He's got the skulls, like death, he's killing people. Interestingly enough, I just noticed this also. I don't know what this is on the cover. Maybe it's like edition 3 or comic 3. But that picture I just showed you of the Kabbalah Tree of Life, Saturn is 3 on there. So that's interesting that we have Saturn here and Thanos, and now we have a 3 on the comic book cover also. I mean, that could be nothing, but that's just, I don't know what you would call that. I'm not saying it's like planned, but it could just be like serendipity or like an organic consequence or occurrence that happened. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, it's just definitely, it's not an accident that this guy's from Saturn. I just realized this because I haven't watched these movies, and I found that out the other day that's where he's from, and it's like, oh, of course he is. Lastly, I think this is from a Sega Saturn game of all consoles, right? A Marvel Avengers Sega Saturn game. I can't tell you which one. I just saw this picture. I've crushed all opposition. I, Thanos, now possess all that is. So he's God, right? He owns everything. Which is really what Saturnism is about. Is about, becoming God and trying to fill that role and setting yourself or your government up as God. It's kind of what Satanism is largely about. Anyways, the reason I am showing you this picture is because we have the hexagon. I thought it was funny that in this scene, he gathers all the stones and they make a hexagon. And a hexagon is a two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional cube. How I always picture it is if you imagine like a line from here to like the center, you can really envision it. I think it's called spatial vision. There's a term for it that the human eye can do to translate or envision a two-dimensional image into a three-dimensional one. I think it's called spatial vision. I could be wrong about that, but a hexagon is a cube. It's a flattened out cube. You can see it. I mean, I can see it right now. You just have to. I just imagine like lines are connecting it. And I think again, what does that have to do? Okay, what's this? Why does it matter if it's a cube? You know what I mean? Well, here on the North Pole of Saturn, there's a permanent hexagon-shaped storm. I'm not exactly sure about the science behind it, but it's always there. It's always on the North Pole of Saturn. And like I said, look, check out my Saturn worship video if you want more on cube symbolism. And like how I'm saying, there's a bunch of symbols and names and deities that represent the same thing. The same is true for symbols. So there's a bunch of symbols that call back and reference that a bunch of different groups have used that all call back to the same thing. And you wouldn't think of like a cube as a Satan reference or a Saturn reference, but it is. And you know, we've all heard phrases like think outside the box, right? Like, well, the box is what you're trapped in, and Saturn is time, and you're trapped in time, you're trapped in this reality, and it's like, again, see my video. I can't go, this is about Thanos, so I can't go off track too much, but see my video on Saturn worship, or see my video called The Young in Heart versus Time, and it'll go more in depth on that. But it's just funny that they arranged his infinity stones in that particular shape, and he's from Saturn, and now we got this hexagon-shaped storm on the North Pole of Saturn. And this is from a video game from the Sega Saturn. So there's just triple time the Saturn reference, you know what I mean? Anyways, that's all I want to share with you guys. If you know a lot about Marvel and his character in the movie, whether it's just based on from the movies or the comic books or both, ideally, let me know what you think. Let me know if you see or can make any connections that tie into what I'm telling you based off what you've seen from him in the comic books and the movies, because I don't have that much knowledge from those things because I haven't read them or watched them. Anyways, thanks for watching.